This is for the people that have an interest, the people that want to be involved.
There was no collusion at all.
This is for the people that are upset and looking for a place to use their voice.
Both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either.
This is for the people that want to make a difference, for the people that want to be on the right side of history.
Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime.
And I get it. In today's society, it's difficult to have a political opinion and to make it be known. This can be due to fear or because you feel like you don't understand what's going on.
In less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
But if he can do it, so can you. Join me every Sunday on Backstories, where we'll discuss all the top political stories and how it applies to all of us. And trust me, this is not your everyday show on politics. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Backstories with Brandon Dais, where I am no other than Brandon Dais, the host and creator of this show, bringing you the latest in politics. Today's show is surprisingly not going to be that long of a show because, number one, as you know, that I choose to only report on the facts and the actions that have been taken by Congress and taken by Donald Trump. And I choose not to report on the things that they say or tweet because I personally feel that the things that they say and tweet are meaningless and they amount to nothing, and at best they are meritless. So, due to me only reporting on the actions and the facts that have occurred in Washington, D.C., in addition to the fact that there has been a government shutdown for God knows how long, there hasn't been much action or things to report on from Washington, D.C., but I'm still going to give you the latest. So, as reported previously on this show, Donald Trump's third shutdown to have originated or begun in 2018 and has lasted until 2019 was the longest government shutdown in history. And it has affected the country in many ways, ranging from negative impacts on the economy to literally making the country more dangerous by affecting our national security apparatuses. Quote, the FBI Association's report, which includes anonymous accounts from special agents across the nation and overseas, says the lack of funds has interfered with operations related to crimes against children, sex trafficking, drug and gang crimes, and counterintelligence and counterterrorism operations, end quote. And just like the 800,000 federal employees that were either furloughed and forced to take a leave of absence from work, in addition to those that have been forced to continue working without pay, Donald Trump's job also took a hit of its own. According to the poll conducted by Politico and Morning Consult, 54% of Americans put blame on Donald Trump and the Republican thugs in Congress for the shutdown, which again is only right because it is their fault. Meanwhile, 35% blame Democrats in Congress for the shutdown, and it should be known that the 35% of the country that blame Democrats is Donald Trump's very small base of blind supporters, and that's quite befitting as well, a very small base of supporters for a very small man. That same poll showed that Donald Trump's average disapproval is now at 57%, which is the highest it has ever been. A second poll conducted by CBS News revealed breaks in Donald Trump's base of supporters and Republican supporters. According to a CBS poll, 43% of Republicans said the wall was not worth the shutdown, and 21% of Republicans are now saying that the border can indeed be secured and supported without a wall, when not too long ago, there were not many Republicans with that same sentiment. So, this week brought the announcement that Donald Trump has conceded to yet another major loss, and he has decided to end the shutdown until February 15th, which is to give time for the Democrats and the Republicans in Congress to work toward a compromise regarding border security and protections for immigrants. The reason Donald Trump had to humble and had to abase himself is because of how he was dragged for his hypocrisy in claiming to be a national security expert in his own right, and for the fact that he was supposed to be protecting those forgotten Americans, right? Well, he's done next to none of that, and he is not a national security expert, but you don't need me to tell you that. This is in addition to what I reported last week, however, on the fact that Donald Trump last week gave the Senate a proposal that he had and that he said the Senate was going to vote on, where he asked for a litany of border security issues or things in exchange for temporary protections for immigrants. And much like everything that has ever occurred in Donald's life, Donald Trump's proposal failed. And again, that's not saying a lot. It's not anything that any of us should be surprised by. Quote, ultimately, only one Democrat opted to back Trump's proposal in the Senate, while multiple Republicans crossed over to support a Democratic option, end quote. In other words, that is to say, the Senate, which is controlled by Donald Trump's Republican comrades, turned against him. They traded on him, and they don't want anything to do with that border wall because it's not popular and it's never going to happen. While I would never ever put my money on it, I would say that this possibly shows that some of the Republican senators are getting backbones finally, but I doubt that very seriously. So now that the government is reopened, what happens next is we have to hope that the Republicans and the Democrats in Congress can work toward a compromise that will increase border security as well as give permanent protections to the immigrants, like the Democrats are demanding to occur. Otherwise, the government is going to shut down for Donald Trump's first shutdown in 2019. That's going to occur in 3 weeks. Because again, February 15th is when we have to have another big budget debate. While I do hope a compromise is reached, I will add the caveat that I hope the Democrats stand strong and remain united on the aspect of there will be no wall. I want to take a moment, though, and announce the winner of the Trump shutdown debacle. And that winner is the same Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House of Representatives, that all of the progressive Democrats in Congress said could not be the person to say no to Donald Trump. I want to remind everyone that Speaker Pelosi is the only woman to have served as the Speaker for the House of Representatives, and she's the only person to achieve a second term as being the Speaker of the House of Representatives in over 60 years. 60 years. This woman, Speaker Pelosi, just gave Donald Trump his most embarrassing defeat, his most severe loss, and it only took her 40 days to do so. Quote, but in recent weeks, Speaker Pelosi proved to be a powerful foil to Trump, politically humiliating him in a way no other public figure has. Today, Trump buckled, agreeing to reopen the government in exchange for absolutely nothing, just days after he agreed to Pelosi's demand to postpone the State of the Union. End quote. Let me tell you guys that the political acumen of Nancy Pelosi is unmatched by anyone that I can think of. And all those people that claim that they don't like Nancy Pelosi, they need to at least put some respect on her damn name. Quote, Pelosi has long held that Trump is weak, easily confused, and easily baited. That informed her strategy. Along with Senate Minority Leader, Democrat Chuck Schumer, she baited Trump into saying, while the cameras were rolling, that he will shut down the government, and he is proud to shut down the government, and he will take the mantle. In interviews and meetings, she tweaked the president, calling the crisis the Trump shutdown. To Trump's face, and she suggested to him, the supposed billionaire thought that furloughed workers could just ask their father for more money. She was betting that Trump would overreact rather than turn into the aggressor and he did, end quote. So here's to Speaker Pelosi, again, Speaker for the House of the Representatives, who I have never doubted and who I could not be more proud of in this moment. And speaking of Speaker Pelosi, she is the perfect transition into the next block for this show, which is Moves and Counter Moves, where I'm going to give you the latest in what Congress has done on the Democrat side and the Republican side, and not so much of what Donald Trump has involved himself in. We're going to start with the Democrats, of course, and obviously their biggest accomplishment was being with Speaker Pelosi and winning the Trump shutdown battle. However, the chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, Representative Elijah Cummings, has opened an investigation into the security clearance process that Donald Trump has initiated within the White House. Now, Representative Elijah Cummings, he stated that he's opening this investigation for two reasons. Number one, he wants to find out why Donald Trump has continued to allow people with security clearance issues to continue to have access to our classified information, government or country secrets. And number two, finding out why Trump has not been responsible to congressional requests concerning his security clearance process, which is required by law that Donald Trump do that. This investigation is not just going to be limited to the present. Representative Elijah Cummings is also going to be looking into the transition period when President Obama's presidency was coming to an end. And you can suspect that there are going to be big blowouts and big ramifications due to this investigation. Now, we want to move on to what the Republican thugs in Congress have been able to achieve or accomplish, if you will. And they have literally got next to nothing productive done during this week, other than assisting the Democrats in handing Trump another embarrassing defeat, which shows why the Republicans can never be a functioning party and why the Republicans should never be trusted to govern or run this country. But one Republican congressman who I want to shed the spotlight on, he has made national headlines yet again for being a white racist, white supremacist. Representative Steve King from Iowa was just disciplined by Congress last week, which I reported on, for stating that there's nothing offensive about white supremacy. He, again, went into the public eye, this time stating that in his mind he was not a racist. Quote, "It is stunning and astonishing to me that 4 words in a New York Times quote can outweigh 20-some years of public service," he said to a crowd of roughly 70 people. Oh, he's popular, 70 people, who attended the event in Primgar, Iowa. He remains adamant, "I am not a racist. I've made more than one mistake. We all have. I should have never done the interview with the New York Times," he added, end quote. And that quote is basically letting you know that he feels his mistake was being interviewed by the New York Times and not the fact that he's a white supremacist and a racist. Wow. He thinks he's being coy or clever by giving out this apology, if you will, but he isn't fooling anyone. Secondly, ever since the Republicans were in control of the Senate, the White House, and the House of Representatives, starting in 2016 until now, they have tried and failed several times to repeal and replace Obamacare. They have also been successful at stopping all of the advertising for Obamacare's open enrollment period as a means to decrease the signups for people to get access to healthcare insurance. Due to these actions, the Republicans and Donald Trump accomplished yet another great thing for them. And now they own the fact that there are 7 million additional people that now do not have healthcare insurance in this country. Kudos to the Republicans yet again. Quote, "The number of Americans without health insurance has increased by 7 million since Donald Trump took office. New Gallup data released Wednesday shows the country's uninsured rate has steadily ticked upward since 2016, rising from a low 10.9% in the late 2016 to 13.7%, a 4-year high," end quote. Up next, we're going to go ahead and cover Robert Mueller's special prosecution.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck. So I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it. I will take the mantle of shutting down. A possible shutdown if we don't get the wall money. And I think probably if I was ever going to do a shutdown, this would be a very good time to do a shutdown. If it was up to me, I'd shut down government. I would have no problem doing a shutdown. Even if we have to think about closing up the country for a while, we're going to get the wall. We have no choice. We'll close down the country. If we don't change it, let's have a shutdown. We'll do a shutdown, and it's worth it for our country. I'd love to see a shutdown if we don't get this stuff taken care of. Then shut it down. We'll go with another shutdown. I would shut it down over this issue. I can't speak for everybody at the table, but I will tell you, I would shut it down over this issue. So would I shut it down over this issue? Yes. Believe me, we have to close down our government. We're building that wall.
If there is a shutdown, I think it would be a tremendously negative mark on the President of the United States.
All right, so let me tell you guys that the shit is getting very real for Donald Trump when it comes to Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller and the Trump-Russia collusion investigation. Reports have come out of a new lane for Robert Mueller's investigation, as he is now probing the relationship between Donald Trump and the National Rifle Association, better known as the NRA. The discovery, however, of Trump having close ties with the NRA is not shocking when you consider the fact that the NRA has already come under investigations from Congress concerning the NRA's close ties to Russia. In total, the NRA has spent over $30 million on Donald Trump, which is more than the NRA has spent on all elections from 2008 to 2012 combined. The problem with that $30 million donation to Donald Trump's campaign, however, is the fact that $19.2 million of that $30 million came from an unknown, undisclosed individual. Sure, it was not a Russian, right? The relationship between Donald Trump and the NRA is also suspicious due to this woman. She is Maria Butina, a Russian spy that was captured here in the United States and has pled guilty to conspiracy against the USA due to her infiltrating the Republican Party through the members of the NRA. But the blockbuster development in the Robert Mueller special prosecution came when Robert Mueller indicted and had the FBI arrest Roger Stone. Roger Stone was indicted for 7 total crimes, which include obstruction of official proceedings, obstruction of justice, making false statements, and witness tampering. Roger Stone's indictment is relevant to Trump-Russia collusion because not only was he Trump's partner in crime, literally, for several years, but also because he was in contact with the hacker in Russia known as WikiLeaks when WikiLeaks released Hillary Clinton's and other Democrat emails. The most damning part of the indictment pertaining to Donald Trump, however, came with this one very specific line. Quote, "The text of his indictment also mentions that a senior Trump campaign official was directed to contact Stone about damaging information that WikiLeaks might have had on Hillary Clinton," end quote. So, of course, the colluder-in-chief, Donald Trump, has called the arrest, in addition to the whole Trump-Russia collusion investigation, a witch hunt several times. I mean, it's really old and played out at this point. But if it really were to be a witch hunt, there have been 37 witches identified. George Papadopoulos, Trump's former foreign policy advisor during the 2016 campaign, he pled guilty to lying to the FBI. Paul Manafort, Trump's former campaign chairman, convicted of 8 counts of financial crimes and he struck a plea deal on the 17 other crimes related to Trump-Russia collusion to avoid a second trial. Rick Gates, Trump's former campaign aide that was Manafort's business partner, has pled guilty to making false statements and conspiracy against the United States. Mr. Lock Her Up, Michael Flynn, Trump's former national security advisor, pled guilty to lying to the FBI. 13 Russians and 3 Russian companies in the United States indicted on conspiracy charges and identity theft while spreading Russian propaganda in the United States. Alex van der Zwaan, a lawyer from London who has pled guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with Trump, former campaign aide Rick Gates. 12 Russian spies charged with crimes related to hacking and leaking of Democrats' emails. Michael Cohen, Trump's former personal lawyer, has pled guilty to 8 counts of tax and bank charges, hush money payments to women who had affairs with Donald Trump, and lying to Congress. So, if Donald Trump was to keep up with the whole witch hunt argument, Robert Mueller has certainly proven that witches do indeed exist. Up next in the next block of the show, we are going to cover my picks for the top 5 most ridiculous stories to make headlines. I'll see you after the break.
People love you, and you win. And when your son looks at you and says, Mama, look, you won, bullies don't win. And I said, baby, they don't, because we're going to go in there and we're going to impeach the motherfucker.
When it comes to Republican thugs in Congress now claiming that they want common sense government, I cannot be bothered. Quote, in private, irritated Republican senators lashed out at each other over the 35-day shutdown, with conservative hardliners and moderates attacking Trump's strategy and his decision to capitulate by reopening the government without winning a dime for his border wall. Many congressional Republicans say they knew that this impasse would not end well for the GOP, which is another name for the Republican Party, but went along with Trump in the name of party unity, end quote. It's almost as if hypocrisy originated within the Republican Party at this point. I mean, to literally claim that you want common sense government, but then simply follow Donald Trump in the name of party unity is contradictory in and of itself. It's literally the equivalent to playing Russian roulette without wanting the risk of death. I mean, you cannot have one without the other. You cannot follow Trump and not want bad things to happen to you, which is why ultimately I cannot be bothered. When it comes to Donald Trump and Republicans' obsession with Hillary Clinton's emails, I cannot be bothered. Shortly after his long-term homeboy Roger Stone was arrested and thrown into the slammer, the fangirl Donald Trump ran to his Twitter account to try and turn everyone's attention back to Hillary Clinton's God-forbidden emails. Hillary Clinton's emails is an issue that was resolved in 2016, 3 years ago, and I will not be covering Donald Trump's tweets here because I, again, cannot be bothered. When it comes to anything, absolutely anything about Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I cannot be bothered. Shortly after Roger Stone was arrested, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the world's most prolific and obnoxious liar, ran in front of a CNN camera to spread this spin, if you will. Let's take a look.
Is White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. Sarah, thank you so much for being with us. Full disclosure, we invited you on the show and you were eager to come on to talk about the shutdown this morning. And then I think we were all surprised by this activity in Fort Lauderdale this morning. Roger Stone, the president's longtime political advisor, placed under arrest. What's your reaction?
Look, my first reaction is real simple. This has nothing to do with the president and certainly nothing to do with the White House. This is something that has to do solely with that individual and not something that affects us here in this building.
Nothing to do with the president. On this show a couple months ago, Corey Lewandowski, who was one-time campaign manager to then candidate Donald Trump, used to tell me it would make him crazy when then candidate Trump would talk to Roger Stone on the phone, and it would happen a lot. So there is a connection between Roger Stone and the now president of the United States. You would concede that.
Look, Roger Stone's somebody who's been a consultant for dozens of Republican presidents and candidates and members of Congress. But conversations between those individuals have nothing to do with the fact of what these charges are about, and that's about whether or not he made false statements. We'll let the courts make that decision. I think a bigger question is if this is the standard, will this same standard apply to people like Hillary Clinton, James Comey, Clapper? Will we see these same people who we know have also made false statements? Will that same standard apply? And that's a question that we'll have to see what happens on that front.
Let me read you a paragraph from this 24-page indictment. It says, after the July 22nd, 2016 release of stolen DNC emails by Organization One, that's WikiLeaks, a senior Trump campaign official was directed to contact Stone about any additional releases and what other damaging information Organization One had regarding the Clinton campaign. The question is, a senior Trump campaign official was directed by whom to contact Roger Stone? Did the president direct someone to contact Roger Stone about stolen emails?
Look, John, I'm not an attorney. I haven't read through that. Even if I had, I'm not going to be able to provide you some type of insider legal analysis. What I can tell you is that the specific charges that have been brought against Mr. Stone don't have anything to do with the president. Well, if you want to get into the weeds on that,
Sarah,
you have to talk to an attorney.
In this case, it's not the weeds. We only know if it had something to do with the president when we know whether it was, in fact, then candidate Donald Trump who directed a senior Trump campaign official to contact Roger Stone. Do you know whether that individual was the president?
Look, I know that the charges are about whether or not he gave false statements, and that's on that individual. That has nothing to do with the president. Those are the charges that they have brought against this individual. When you want to get into specific questions, you'll have to talk to the president's outside counsel on that.
What the reporter should have asked Sarah Huckabee Sanders is if Roger Stone's arrest had nothing to do with Donald Trump and the White House, then why in the hell is Robert Mueller going after Roger Stone to begin with, Sarah? Since CNN did not ask you, Sarah, maybe you can respond to me directly. I cannot be bothered with this because Sarah Huckabee Sanders is so dedicated to lying that she has literally dumbed herself down to Donald Trump levels. Or maybe she was always that dumb to begin with. I'll leave that to you guys to decide, but I don't know and I don't care to know. When it comes to the supposed strength of Donald Trump, I cannot be bothered. On Thursday this past week, Donald Trump tried to convey strength and defiance against the Democrats, stating that he would never cave in on his request for ending the shutdown unless he got that invisible wall. However, not even 24 hours later, Donald Trump did indeed cave in when he strolled out into the Rose Garden all alone to announce that he had lost his own Trump shutdown battle and that the government is going to reopen without one red penny going towards that dumb wall. I cannot be bothered with this because it is the orange man, Donald Trump, and B, because I'm an adult and I do not delight in childlike fantasies such as Donald Trump and that wall. When it comes to the most miserable and ugliest human being on the planet, known as Ann Coulter, I cannot be bothered. After once dubbing Donald Trump as a, quote, emperor god, end quote, Ann Coulter is now calling him a wimp because he will never be able to deliver on that ridiculous wall that he promised. I cannot be bothered with the story simply because of the fact that I don't delight in childlike fantasies like Trump and his wall, but I also do not delight in the misery of self-defeating white women like Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter is a similar person to Mrs. Waterford from The Handmaid's Tale, only Ann Coulter lacks any soul, any knowledge, any wisdom, and she lacks any conscience like Mrs. Waterford, which is what makes Ann Coulter that much more of an empty vessel. I'm going to come to conclude after the break.
People have come to see the wizard, and the wizard has promised them the Great Wall of Trump, paid for by the Mexicans. But at the moment, for the unveiling of the wall, it appears to be an invisible one. And where are the pesos? Where are the Mexican pesos that the American people were promised would pay for this wall? There are no pesos. And so now a man who demagogued this issue from the first hour, coming down the escalator, is being held to account. And so we're going to watch this farce play out tonight, and it will be a historic occasion because there has never been a president who has appeared from the Oval Office of the White House for the express and explicit purposes of gaslighting the American people about 100% pure grade BS.
All right, guys, so here's the final segment I've come to conclude, which are going to be my final remarks on today's episode. So, Lately, the liberals and the Democrats have gone out of control with not only the amount of focus on who's running for the 2020 presidential spot, but also the number of Democratic candidates that are running to be president. While that is certainly an issue in and of itself, I have another issue I need to address concerning the Democratic Party, and that is their habit of having double standards. The Democratic Party and those that support it have walled themselves into this double standard by dubbing Trump supporters as blind and deplorable because they only support Donald Trump due to him being a white male Republican. Well, ever since Democratic Senator Kamala Harris has announced her presidential candidacy for 2020, there has been an onslaught of African American pundits implying that all African Americans should be backing Kamala Harris because she's black. I pose that this whole view that we should all be supporting Kamala Harris because she's black and we're black as a double standard, because blacks only support Kamala Harris because she's black, then that's a double standard, because how can we critique or criticize or throw dirt towards Republicans that support Donald Trump because he's a white Republican male? I mean, it's literally a double standard that's right in our faces, but no one wants to talk about it. I personally do not support Kamala Harris running for 2020, which is something I had not even planned on discussing until we know who all of the candidates are. I don't support Kamala Harris running at this time, and I want to make that clear. I would support her otherwise, but not at this time. And it boils down to two big reasons why I do not support her. The first being her contradictory track record while she served as the Attorney General in California. And if you want to look that record up, please feel free to do so. But there's also the fact that I believe that the next president, no matter what, is going to be a white man, whether it is a Democrat or a Republican. That's just the way that it is. Don't get me wrong, however, I am one of those people that truly believes that it is beyond time that a woman of any color be in control of a country. But with today's political climate and with white people being in the majority, Kamala Harris already has two strikes against her, being a black woman. My concerns right now for the country is greater than any social issues right now. We literally have a lunatic in the White House trying to dismantle the government from within the White House. So I'm not concerned about race or gender or any of that when it comes to the presidential spot for 2020. I am more concerned with making sure we get Donald Trump out of the White House. That is the most important thing that needs to take place. I also want to say that I do not intend on this final remark to be an attack against Senator Kamala Harris, and I don't mean it to be an attack against liberals or Democrats. I just want to simply point out that 2020 presidential candidacies should be more than social issues. It needs to be looking at what is going to be the best outcome for this country on a plethora of issues, not just race and gender. So, that's it for today's episode. I thank you all for joining me. Please remember to like and follow me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, as well as subscribing to me on YouTube and any other podcast outlet that you choose. The information can be found at www.backstories-us.com. And I'll see you guys all next week for a new episode of Backstories, number 14. It'll be episode 14, and it will not be your everyday show on politics.